Both inside and out, the First Church of Christ Scientist in Berkeley, California, is an architectural treasure, a sublime work of art that delights the senses and stirs the spirit. Encountering the remarkable building for the first time, visitors are often filled with surprise and wonder. That was the reaction of the architectural historian Robert Judson Clark when he came upon the church as an undergraduate student at the University of California.
As I was walking in the part of Berkeley just south of the campus, I encountered this amazing building. I had never seen anything like it before. It was perplexing. The use of materials, the aggressive quality, and yet the way it sat there completely at peace with itself.
Clark learned that the eccentric and enigmatic structure had been designed by the Berkeley architect, Bernard Maybeck.
It wasn't until 3 years later that I finally saw the inside of First Church Berkeley, and it far outdid anything I could really have imagined. The quality of light in that building, the strong and convincing structure that hovers over, and the supports of concrete and how those meld into sculpture and then wood has made it my favorite religious building in the world.
Bernard Maybeck was that rare architect who could be brilliantly original while incorporating ideas from earlier periods. In his inspired design for First Church, he wove Byzantine, Romanesque, Gothic, Japanese, and modern features into a luminous and deeply moving spiritual tapestry, creating what many consider his greatest masterpiece. Initially, however, Maybeck almost rejected the project. He feared the congregation wanted something beneath his artistic standards, what he called sham or humbug. Fortunately, the women on the plans committee persevered, especially the leader of the group, Eulora Jennings, who greatly admired Maybeck's work.
Eulora Jennings, who was the head of that plans committee, was a teacher of art. She was actually an arts and crafts person of some importance in Berkeley and Oakland at the time.
Eulora Jennings was convinced that Maybeck was the right person to give physical form to the aspirations of the congregation. She later made her own contribution to the project by fabricating the handsome reflector lights in the church auditorium.
Bernard Maybeck at the time knew little or nothing about Christian Science. What impressed him was that these very sincere women of the plans committee truly believed what they were telling him about. They wanted a church that had a quality of homelikeness, to be in a garden.
In an audio interview recorded in the early 1950s, shortly after he turned 90, Bernard Maybeck recalled his impression of the women on the plans committee.
They didn't want any humbug in the thing. They had a feeling that they were guided by God's suggestions, and I felt these women are absolutely solid. They didn't want any humbug.
He greatly admired the qualities they wanted in their church: unity, harmony, beauty, light, and peace. In that same interview, Maybeck compared the women's sincerity with the powerful faith that sustained the building of the great Gothic cathedrals in France in the 12th century.
Absolute sincerity. You feel it. Then I asked myself, what would a man of the 12th century do if he came today and built this church for the Christian Scientists? And so I just put myself in the feeling of that fellow of the 12th century.
During his student days at the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris, Maybeck had gained a deep appreciation for both Romanesque and Gothic architecture, especially the Gothic cathedrals of the 12th century. Now he sought to evoke the spiritual depth he found in those great works, in the first Church of Christ Scientist. And his vision didn't stop there. It reached still further back in time, back to the early years of the Christian church.
He went back to the original Christian church. There was talk of Christian Science being the primitive church.
For this project, Maybeck set aside the usual preference for soaring vertical space in ecclesiastical architecture in favor of a strongly horizontal configuration. In the auditorium, he used structure to define an intimate and egalitarian space that reflects the communitarian values of Christian Science.
He's taking structure and he's making that the dominant element. And it isn't space. Space really isn't what this building is about. It's about structure, pushing down on that space. And since pushing the space out, it's an expansive feeling.
William Marquand is an architect and the founding director of the Maybeck Foundation. He says that the communal space crafted by Maybeck expresses core values of Christian Science.
The Christian Scientists were about bringing their religion down to earth in a way that changed their daily lives. So that sense of heaven and of the world and of the divine being with us is something that was very much part of their beliefs.
The square Greek cross plan underscores the communal character of worship. Instead of an altar, there is a raised dais with two stands where speakers read from the Bible and from the writings of Mary Baker Eddy, the founder of Christian Science.
I believe that he designed a more horizontal, squarish space because he understood that one of the tenets of Christian Science religion was a communal experience. For example, in Wednesday night meetings, when a person stands up and gives their experience of having been mentally healed, they are face to face, so that the plan fits the religion.
First Church Berkeley is all the more remarkable for the bold and ingenious way in which Maybeck used modern building materials to express traditional forms and to articulate timeless ideals.
The materials he had at hand, of course, would be materials of his world, concrete and steel windows and things of that nature.
Reinforced concrete is used extensively throughout the church, both for structural and decorative purposes. In the auditorium, 4 large concrete piers are topped with sculpted and polychromed capitals that show both Byzantine and Romanesque influence. The piers support massive wooden diagonal trusses, which are fitted with panels of gilded Gothic tracery, suggesting the divine. The panels also serve the practical purpose of hiding steel tension rods. The truss system is richly adorned with painted designs executed by the architectural painter Christian Schneckenberger. Clearly visible is Maybeck's mark, a stylized A and M, the initials of his beloved wife, Annie. Schneckenberger's sign, in the form of a snail, is also evident.
It's a very decorated building, and yet it comes off as a whole because it is put together with such mastery.
Maybeck was a master of improvisation, and he often used his creative powers to reframe problems as opportunities. That happened during the fabrication of the speaker stands at First Church. The present floral design resulted from an accidental wrinkling of the paper used to line the wood forms. Maybeck gave his own account in an audio recording made in the early 1950s.
I put some tar paper on the inside, and then when I poured the concrete into it, it made wrinkles. And I happen to have a wonderful painter who did all the painting, Schneckenberger. I told him, those cracks that are there, can't you use it? So he used the cracks for branches, Schneckenberger, put in these leaves so as to make it look like branches.
At ground level, a band of translucent glass walls balances the mass and gravity of the trusses above. Here, Maybeck uses light to signify the presence of the divine. The glass walls are made of fenestra metal sash, an industrial product that was used primarily in factories. Curiously, the maker of fenestra initially rejected Maybeck's order.
The manufacturer of these fenestra windows wrote and said it just wasn't done and wasn't appropriate for a church. Maybeck answered that he would alter them or make them so they would be church-like.
As he did with the wrinkles on the reader's stands, Maybeck devised a solution that actually enhances the appearance of the glass walls. He specified the use of hammered translucent Belgian glass and also added an extra vertical framing strip or mullion to the steel frame.
So the grid is made different by that vertical strip of leading, and that, of course, emphasizes the Japanesque quality. Shoji-like screens, but they really are factory sash.
The architecture critic Alan Temko knew Maybeck and discussed the project with him. According to Temko, Maybeck saw no contradiction between the use of industrial materials and his love of handcraft.
If you look at the glass in the Christian Science Church, the glass is handicraft, but it's set in industrial sash. So he mixed the two, and he saw no reason why you had to dogmatically exclude one for the other. This is his greatness.
He's not rejecting modern techniques, but it always should have the human hand in it, whether that is the handmade glass or adding an extra mullion. Always the human hand is going to be evident in Maybeck's buildings. This is a building that comes not only just from the mind, but also from the heart and the hand as well, too. All of them working together, totally integrated.
Architect William Marquand suggests that Maybeck's use of non-structural glass curtain walls was highly unorthodox at a time when stained glass windows were standard in churches, and when church interiors were usually isolated from the world outside.
He has a very transparent feeling for the perimeter of the church. We can feel the interior of the church being connected to its own community without a solid wall separating them. And that is something that was extremely radical for church design. It was just a remarkable innovation and really took this building into the modern era. I think you'd have to say it's one of the first really modern churches.
While interested in modern materials, Maybeck remained committed to designing in harmony with nature. At First Church, he made extensive use of trellises to create a garden-like atmosphere.
Trellises softened the edge of a building into the landscape. And not only could you grow vines on it, but the shadows that it cast softened the profile of the building.
Like all great works of art, First Church continues to stir powerful emotions, year after year and generation after generation. And it continues to earn the admiration of architects, historians, and the general public. Critic Alan Temko remembers taking the famous architect Louis Kahn to see the church on a moonlit night.
Lou Kahn's cheek was scarred. He had been burned as a child. And he went to one of the big concrete piers outside. He put his scarred cheek up against the concrete, and he felt the power of Maybeck. He had felt that in the concrete. And then he started crying.
Mabeck biographer Kenneth Cardwell brought other well-known architects to inspect the church, including Philip Johnson, an apostle of modernism.
And he was just overcome. He thought this was a wonderful creation. And every architect I took, no matter what his own personal style had been, thought that this church was a very fine piece of architecture.
The only other American church that has quite this feeling is Unity Temple by Frank Lloyd Wright in Oak Park, Illinois. It's not a very large building, but it has tremendous spiritual strength. Everything has a sincerity and a joy to it.
I've yet to find something that renews my love of architecture as does this building by Bernard Mabeck. This building is a total masterpiece.
An American masterpiece is dedicated to the memory of Kenneth Cardwell, Robert Judson Clark, and Alan Temko, all of whom made important contributions to our understanding and appreciation of Bernard Mabeck.